Welcome back to Season 2 of Acer P Bonsai. I'm Pat, and my goal here at Acer P Bonsai is to teach the art and science of Japanese maple bonsai. Here in front of us, we've got a really cool little tree. This is an air layer that I took off of one of my very first Japanese maples. It had this really kind of grotesque inverse tapered area about a foot up the trunk, and so I was kind of concerned about how that tree could ever really make a good bonsai considering that structural flaw. But it had this kind of really unique branching up above there, and I thought, why not just use that inverse tapered knobby area to our advantage? So that's exactly what we did. We air layered that last year, and you can check out the link here for that video where we separated this air layer. And so yeah, that tree came off the top of this bad boy here. You can see it's got a pretty straight trunk all the way up, and then there's the chop we made. You can also see this excavation that we did in the original air layer video where I showed how we air layered that. You can see on the backside here, I'm developing this other trunk all the way up there. So it's fattening up now. We're gonna let it grow a whole nother season. I'll probably pot this up into a large wooden box in another episode and take a look at these roots. I imagine they look pretty bad because this is one of my very first trees. I was really just learning about repotting. This branch here was an approach graft I'd taken off of the apex of the tree. I ran a branch like this all the way down, and then I approach grafted right here like that. It was off of one of the branches of this tree. So anyway, pretty cool. I've still got this tree going. I'm gonna develop this apex here. Eventually I'll layer the top of this off again. But for now, let's focus our attention onto this tree. I gave you a quick history of the genesis of this air layer here. It's got some neat movement. There's definitely some structural flaws here. Like you can see this apex coming up this way. This is almost an exact 90-degree angle. It's a pretty ugly curve. So possibly we should just develop this as the new apex and remove that completely. That will give kind of a contrasting movement. This trunk line going that way, this one going this way. This branch here, this was an approach graft. These two branches over here, these were approach grafts as well. This branch here, this was an approach graft that I did a couple of years ago. So I've kind of already been Frankensteining this tree, and I think it's time that we advance our Frankenstein skills and do some advanced grafting. And we're gonna graft over this tree with Beni Chidori. Beni Chidori is one of my favorite cultivars. And Beni Chidori in Japanese, what that means is red plover. The red plover is this really beautiful little shorebird, and it has this kind of peachy orange crest on the top of its head. I think that's where they got the name, because in spring it explodes with this beautiful peachy pink orange spring display. I've got this little Beni Chidori here, and boy, I grew this out as much as I could last year, so it's maybe doubled in size. I also was able to take some rooted cuttings off of this and share those with friends, and even sold a few at the Winter Silhouette Show. As you can see, it's got a lot of wire scarring down low on the trunk. It's going to take quite a while for us to grow that out and heal over those scars. So for now, we're going to use this as mother stock. My plan is to plant this into the same container, a large grow box, as this tree, and then as it grows, I'll be able to use it as donor material on our larger tree here. There's going to be plenty of room in this new grow box, over double the size. We're going to plant this close to center, but slightly offset. And then the little Beni Chidori, we're gonna orient it so that these longer branches are facing toward the tree, and we can get them in the correct position to do a few thread grafts. First things first, let's get this tree out of the box. We didn't tie this tree in, but we did put a tiny nail through the bottom of the box to hold it in place. And that's popped loose pretty easily. I'm gonna see if I can get this out of here with the minimum amount of spillage. It's actually looking pretty solid. Still have a pretty decent sized wound over here that we need to continue healing. Let's get this out of the way. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is start combing out these roots. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take this tree outside and rinse this off. All right, let's see if we can get this cleaned off. Let's get back inside. First thing we need to do is secure the tree into the bottom of the box. And there we have it. Get our tree oriented onto the nail. Now that tree is secured really firmly into the box. Make sure that our roots stay nice and moist. The orientation of this tree is going to determine our access by our donor material. So we actually need to rotate it around this way. We've got this kind of open spot over here where we're going to be able to get up into these apices and make a few of these grafts. Here's a good example of one of those roots that's headed off in the wrong direction. Anchor this root over here. There you can see we've got the nail holding the root in the correct position. Okay, so as you can see, we needed a few nails to sort the roots and get them spread out in a nice radial fashion. There's a bunch of roots over here, fairly well spread on their own, and then over here on the left, the same. These are fairly well situated in a nice radial fashion, so not a lot of work needs to be done there. We still have a gap here that we're gonna have to work in the future, and then on the back side here, where we had that die back, you can see we have a whole open spot here that's gonna have to be worked on in the future, probably a few root grafts. So this is pretty good for now. I like how we have it situated. Let's take a look at our Beni Chidori so we can get that into the wooden box here. One more spray to make sure these roots are doing fine. We've got our Beni Chidori out of the container, and we've picked a little bit of that sphagnum moss out of it to prevent excess moisture and potential rotting in the future. We're not going to do an excessive amount of pruning on these roots. Let's get it in that wooden box next to our air layer. All right, and I think if we can get this tree right down in here, this will allow this whip here on the right to reach over to that apex. These two whips I can swing over here. I think we can nail that down. Sitting diagonal right over here. Get a piece of this wire. That's looking good there. Need to clean that out so that we can get our donor material up through there. All right, that's much better. You might have thought we were going to use this tip, but these buds had already swollen too much. I wasn't going to be able to get them to fit without a much bigger hole. Now we are going to sacrifice this branch. We're going to see if we can get this up through there a little further. There we go. We're not going to cut these two here and here. Those can grow and we'll use those for future grafts. But this is going to be the beginning of a new apex right here. We're able to get that all the way up through there. These two buds scrape the side slightly, but that is nice and firmly attached. Little piece of wire to hold it in place. Let's go this way. We want to make sure this little branch stays put. So this wire here, hold that branch in place until it's had time to heal. Just like so. Here we go, that's a nice position there. We're going to cover that up with some cut putty at the entrance and the exit of that wound. Don't want that clay to get down inside the hole. Just enough to seal this off from water. That's nice. That's going to be a beautiful little happy tree. I'm going to cover up that little cut we made. This one here, not quite long enough. Got a few more whips. Oh yeah, these are nice and long. And the buds are still nice and small. We're going to be able to use these for sure. I want to get this one right through there. I'm going to see if I can get a second one right here. We're back outside and I have to apologize. My camera ran out of batteries while I was filming the last portion of the thread grafting. So we've kind of jumped ahead here and I just wanted to bring you to the finished product. So we have one thread graft headed over this way and it's exiting the trunk right up here before it starts to split. We're going to develop a new trunk line here. Over here on your right hand side, I've got two thread grafts coming off of the same whip, one right here and one coming toward the camera. This one here I strategically placed so that we can develop this trunk line. It'll have a slight bump this way and then it'll head up. We'll be able to carve that out after this gets some established growth. This one over here to the far side, consider this just some additional Beni Chidori material that we're going to be able to grow out and start whipping around to add additional branches throughout this entire tree. At the end of the day, we're going to convert all of the foliage over to Beni Chidori and start rebuilding the tree. So what that means, for example, is everything to the left-hand side of this new whip, this is all going to be cut off eventually. We're going to develop the new top of this tree from here. I decided to start at the apex of these two trunks so that I could build as much strength as possible into these new Beni Chidori growths. Once those elongate, I'll be able to whip them around and start building the lower branches. As we start building those lower branches, we can start cutting away the old Momiji growth, establishing this tree as a fully grafted over Beni Chidori. I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer, and that way I can show you one more rotation around the tree. Here's a closer look at those thread grafts. We've got this one coming out here. This thread graft is my planned continuation of the trunk line. Thanks again for joining me on the first episode of Season 2 of Acer Bonsai. Hop into the comments. Let me know what's going on in your Japanese maple garden. Thanks and have a great day.